BYEpocalypse. It's week 12, and we've got every quarterback and every tight end ranked and tiered. So before Sunday, let's break down these updated rankings for week 12 of the 2024 NFL season. Welcome to E&M Fantasy Football, presented by ErvinandM.com, where I combine industry-leading data, Vegas sportsbooks, and expert analysis to provide you with optimal weekly rankings for the utmost accuracy when setting your weekly lineups in your fantasy football league. I'm writing this on Thursday night for Friday's video. Expect more videos every week for the other unit groupings like wide receiver and running back. And click the playlist for all the updated rankings for week 12. There's no Bills, no Bengals, Falcons, Jets, Jags, or Saints. We begin the rankings with quarterbacks. Sportsbooks have these quarterbacks projected to go for 260 to 290 yards this week. There's only two. They are Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts. The stats don't lie, and these two truly stand alone with their arms and legs and touchdown rates. Lamar Jackson, 285 over-under, 314 yards per game. He scores 2.5 touchdowns per game, and they are 3-point favorites in the highest scoring game of the week, set at 51 versus the Chargers. Jalen Hurts, only 259 over-under, but 261 yards per game, and he scores 2.3 touchdowns per game. They are 3-point favorites in another high-scoring battle, set for 49 points against the Rams' 22nd worst pass defense. No one else comes even close to this production at the quarterback position. They are your undisputed S tier for week 12. A tier is for the rest of the elite quarterbacks, projected for 250 to 260 total yards. All these guys have a chance to finish as the top quarterback for week 12. And we're going to kick it off with Jared Goff. At 347 over-under, 249 yards per game. He scores 2.1 touchdowns per game, and they are 7-point favorites with a 50-point total versus the Colts. He has the softest matchup out of the group. The Colts are 26th against the pass, and with this spread in total, we can only assume performance similar to last week. Don't get me wrong, I don't think they're going to score 50 points again, but expect Goff to have an outstanding performance. We'll go back-to-back with opposing quarterbacks in another heater. Brock Purdy and Jordan Love. Brock Purdy, 257 over-under, 288 yards per game, 1.7 touchdowns per game. Jordan Love, 247 over-under, 260 yards per game, and 2.1 touchdowns per game. The Niners face Green Bay's 13th best pass defense as the 4th highest passing team, and tied with Green Bay as the 8th highest scoring offense. The Packers face off against the Niners' 8th best pass defense and 6th total defense as the 9th highest passing offense. And again, 8th best scoring offense. Brock gets the slight edge here with the better defense and with a slightly higher probability for negative game script, albeit by 2 points for the spread. And Jordan's right behind him with the Packers as the 2-point favorites at home. Jaden Daniels at 6. 263 over-under, 256 yards per game, but only 1.3 touchdowns per game. His over-under is a bit high. His average is great, but his touchdown rate is nothing like the top 5. Couple that with being 10-point favorites, and he may not need to do much to defeat the lowly Dallas secondary, coming in at 19th. That's why he finds himself last in the A tier, but you're not even the least bit worried. B tier is projected for 240 to 250 total yards. This is where it gets interesting. They still have good matchups with high totals, and there's 7 of them, all with their own bit of nuance, but it's close. And Justin Herbert comes in at number 7. 248 over-under, 237 yards per game. Out of the whole tier, his numbers are the least impressive. In the past few weeks, though, we can only assume he's totally 100% healthy, and that return to form has him as slight dogs by only 3 points in the highest scoring game of the week against the worst pass defense in the league. This matchup is fantastic for the Chargers. It has everything needed for a close, high-scoring game, which means fantasy points. Geno Smith at 8. 251 over-under, 298 yards per game. He continues to be disrespected by consensus rankings and Vegas. His passing offense is still second in the league. If only his touchdown rate was a bit better. At 1.3, he could be higher. But he may get that opportunity as this is the closest game of the week with an excellent total against the below-average 21st worst pass defense of the Cardinals. To boot, they're at home. Lock him in. Kyler Murray at 9. His opponent in this game. 245 over-under, 243 yards per game, 1.6 tutties per game. Seattle's pass defense is league average at 15. Kyler has a better touchdown rate and only 23rd in passing yards per game, but 13th as a scoring offense. They're the slight favorites away from home, and if you wanted to go Kyler over Geno, I wouldn't mind. Don't be scared. And at 10, ErvinandM.com. ErvinandM.com is my company my best friend and I started in 2020. We literally make everything ourselves by hand. We have earrings, rings, necklaces, bracelets, tie clips, apparel, and more. Over a dozen curated gemstones and 100 handcrafted products. If you need a gift or something special for yourself, use the promo code in the description, find something you love, and buy it today. Now back to the video. If you like spending money and looking good, shop in my store, ErvinandM.com. But if you don't, subscribe. It's free. We'll go Tua, the throwing Samoan at 10. 245 over-under, 240 yards per game, 1.5 tutties per game. I mean, they are huge favorites by a whole touchdown against the lowly divisional Patriots. They are at home for this one, and the total is great. Tua's touchdown rate is above average, and the Patriots' pass defense is below average at 20th. Sportsbooks tell us they will have no problem defeating New England. Patrick Lavon Mahomes II at 11. 240 over-under, 240 yards per game. I debated Patty Lavon and the 12th and 13th quarterbacks heavily, but ultimately this matchup is so ridiculous that he had to be next up. His touchdown rate is above average, but the biggest factor is the spread. Anytime a team is double-digit favorites, the chances for things to get completely out of hand are pretty much imminent. Vegas tells us Carolina's 24th pass defense and 29th total defense will have absolutely no shot at competing in this one, and the Chiefs are out for blood and should bounce back big time in this one. Matthew Stafford at 12. 243 over-under, 256 yards per game, 1.3 tutties per game. But listen to this. In his last 4 games, 2.5 touchdowns per game and 291 yards on average per game. I mean, since the return of his top 2 wideouts, Stafford has been lights out. The yards and touchdown rates are by all accounts S tier. The glaring issue this week, though, is Philly's second best pass defense and number 1 total defense. It's the only thing holding them back. Vegas tells us it'll be a close game with an excellent total, but they could easily fall short against an elite defense. Baker Mayfield at 13, 233 over-under, 250 yards per game, 2.6 touchdowns per game. I mean, we'll say kind of the same for Baker. He now has the highest touchdown rate and throws for a respectable amount of yards. They're the 5th best scoring offense and throw at the 10th highest rate. The glaring issue for them, though, is their 30th worst total defense and the Giants' 4th best pass defense, but 29th run D. They are 6-point favorites, but the total is low, and the game script is set for their running back tandem to put in work as they coast to victory over the Tommy DeVito Giants. From here, it is your last chance for viability. Sportsbooks have this group for 230 to 240 total yards this week. They are on the other side of the ball with tough matchups, struggling offenses, or low scoring totals, but to be honest, no one's getting blown out this week except for the last two in this tier. So rest easy this week, but this is where it starts to get dicey. Bo Nix at 14. 213 over-under, 206 yards per game, but 257 yards in his last 4. 1.7 tutties. I mean, they are sizable favorites like Baker at -6. But the same issue is present. In spite of Bo's elevated performance over the last 4 weeks, the total is so low, and the Raiders boast the 11th best pass defense and 15th best run defense. I mean, couple that with Denver's top 3 total defense, and Nix probably just won't have to do much as he coasts to victory. Sam Darnold at 15. 233 over-under, 239 yards per game, 2 touchdowns per game. I mean, his touchdown rate is excellent, and his yards have been respectable. The total for this game is close, but it's the worst of the week in terms of total, and Chicago boasts the 9th best pass defense. We've seen Darnold display less security with the ball in recent weeks, however. Vegas still has them winning by 3 points away from home. CJ Stroud at 16. 236 over-under, 239 yards per game, only 1.1 tutties per game. They are sizable favorites by 8 in this one. The total is terrible, though, and the Titans are the best in the league against the pass. Couple that with Stroud's touchdown rate, and even as heavy favorites, this should be the biggest passing challenge for Stroud yet. It has all the makings of being another Joe Mixon beatdown. An AR-15 at 17, 246 over-under, which is insane, 215 total yards per game for A-Rich. And alas, we're into the heavy underdogs. Colts are set to lose by 7 in this one. The total is high, so they should put up a fight, but the stats indicate that for all that effort, they won't have much to show for it, even against the soft 27th pass defense of Detroit. His touchdown rate, including his own rushes, is abysmal. I mean, there could be some garbage time, but it's a no for me, dog. Drake May at 18. 235 over-under, only 214 total yards per game, 1.4 tutties per game. Not bad. His touchdown rate is better than AR-15, and he looks to be shaping up to be the best rookie quarterback this season. But they are bottom 3 in scoring and are equally heavy dogs in this one with Miami at +7. To make matters worse, Miami still boasts the 10th best pass defense, so May finds himself at the end of the C tier this week. But from here, it's RIP. It's less than 200 yards. They're unstartable. It's the rest. Caleb Williams, Will Levis, Tommy DeVito, Gardner Minshew, Cooper Rush, Bryce Young. It doesn't matter. That's your top quarterbacks. Let's do the tight ends. We have 5 S-tier tight ends this week. They are George Kittle, 46 over-under, 70 yards per game, 90% touchdown rate. 90%. He almost scores a tutty every game. Travis Kelce, 60 over-under, 51 yards per game, versus Carolina, where 100% of tight ends get home. K. Dotton, 51 over-under, 45 yards per game. He scores a tutty at a 40% rate, but he does have a tough matchup against the Giants, but you're not worried about that. Brock Bowers, 56 over-under, 70 yards per game. 30% touchdown rate. His matchup is tough, though, tougher than the rest, with 50% of the tight ends getting home against Denver. And Trey McBride, 54 over under, 61 yards per game, no touchdowns. And his matchup, not that great. But regardless, do not get it twisted. These top 5 tight ends are all still projected to be in the best position by Vegas Sportsbooks to go over 50 receiving yards this week. This is the highest amount for week 12. They are your elite S-tier tight ends, undisputed. The next tier is for the rest of the tight end ones, projected for about 40 to 50 yards. Any of these guys could finish top 5. They just have more going against them than the guys above. Jonnu Smith at 6, 39 over under, 45 yards per game, and a 30% touchdown rate. His recent performances earn him the top of A tier this week. His yardage totals and rate is best of the tier. Couple that with the 80% success rate for tight ends playing against the Patriots, and he has every reason for another stellar performance. Don't be scared. Dallas Goedert at 7, 41 over under, 55 yards per game. Doesn't score a lot of touchdowns, but 10 out of 10 tight ends got home against the Rams. So his touchdown rate is a bit low, but every single tight end has went over against the Rams this year, and Goddard could easily finish number 1 in this high-scoring game. Lock him in. Hunter Henry at 8, 45 over under, 45 yards per game. Vegas and consensus rankings are finally giving Henry some respect. But you all know we've been shouting how good he's been over expected. His touchdown rate is low, but 7 out of 9 tight ends were able to go over against Miami. He's arguably May's best and easiest target to stay competitive. Don't let the blowout scare you. You should be okay. TJ Hawkinson at 9, 35 over under, 37 yards per game. No touchdowns yet. He's got the lowest yards per game out of the bunch, but he finds himself at 9th this week because Chicago has only allowed 6 out of 10 tight ends this season to do any work. This will be his biggest challenge yet, but like Henry and May, he should remain a security blanket for Darnold in this close game with the Bears. The B tier. This is where it starts to get dicey. This tier is projected for 30 to 40 yards. The volatility is high. These guys are league average for yards, and they live and die by a touchdown. We'll go back to start the waivers off with Andrews and Kraft. For Andrews, 32 over under, 34 yards per game, 50% touchdown rate. For Tucker, 35 over under, 38 yards per game, 50% touchdown rate. I mean, Kraft edges him out for yards while Andrews edges him out for receptions. But don't get it twisted. These guys basically come down with 3 receptions a game and score a touchdown 50% of the time. That alone easily puts them ahead of the others. Andrews faces the Chargers, who have allowed 8 out of 10 to get home, and Kraft, the Niners, allowing 7 out of 10. So lock them in. And up next is Zach Ertz at 12. 37 over under, 39 yards per game. His yards are respectable, but him and the next 2 don't have the touchdown rate to combine with their yardage for the utmost fantasy points. Dallas are heavy dogs in this one while allowing 7 out of 10 tight ends to go over. Ertz should be fine. Sam Laporta at 13. 35 over under, 41 yards per game. A 30% touchdown rate comparatively is pretty good, but really doesn't add much to his totals. The takeaway here, though, is the Colts' stellar flats defense and linebacker core holding 50% of tight ends under. These are tough odds. Laporta is above average, but this is the lowest rate of the entire rankings and should prove to be Laporta's biggest challenge on the season. Will Dissly at 14. 35 over under, 35 yards per game. Dissly has the lowest rate out of the group as a 10%.
Today, Junior?
Disley has the lowest rate out of the group at 10% touchdown rate, but holds on to the B tier simply because the extremely high total and the fact that Baltimore has allowed every single tight end, 10 of 10, 100%, to go over against them. He should get his yards and give you a respectable total. But we're at the cliff. It's the C tier. From here, these are your last viable anythings. It's only 20 to 30 yards in pure desperation, and there's only two. Cole Kmet at 15, 24 over-under, but 36 yards per game. His touchdown rate is respectable at 30%, and it puts him ahead of the next guy. But the fact that Minnesota and the Brian Flores-led defense nullify 50% of the tight ends that they face, I mean, it's going to keep the Bears and Cole Kmet honest. They are dogs with a low total. Not good. Dalton Schultz at 16, 24 over-under, 31 yards per game. I mean, Schultz barely sneaks in as the last viable anything. He has 0 touchdowns on the season and a barely acceptable yards per game average. The only hope here is them being heavy favorites in spite of the Titans boasting the number 1 pass defense. The Titans allow 7 out of 10 tight ends to go over. So he has a path. He could be utilized fairly in this one by Stroud. Maybe. From here, though, it's RIP. It's less than 20 yards. It's the rest. Ja'Tavion Sanders. Isaiah Likely. You know what I'm saying? Visit my store and buy something. AJ Barner. Don't even have a pick. Theo Johnson. Parkinson. It doesn't matter. Anyone and everyone else. I'll throw your quarterbacks and tight ends back on screen, full screen now. Leave your questions below, and sincerely, I hope this helps everyone watching. Thank you all for your time. All the rankings and news for Week 12 will be in the playlist in the top right of the screen. Subscribe and turn on post notifications so you see all the videos each week before submitting your lineups. It's free, so it's a good value. But if you like looking good and spending money, spend it in my store, ErvinandM.com, where everything is handcrafted by my partner and I. Made to order, baby. Now watch some more videos.